Welcome, everyone, to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis, the Director of BIM Development here at CTC Software, and today we're going to continue with this sort of ROI calculator mini-series. We're going to be focusing on generating PDFs and a number of other file export types that we often do when we're working on projects and have to, give these models or drawings out to other team members and how we can do that efficiently. Now, as always, of course, this webinar is being recorded, so you can always come back to it in the future if you want to review the content we're talking about today, perhaps share it with a few others on your team. And also, as always, we like to kind of interact with you while we're working on these webinars. And so if you have questions, we encourage you to throw them into the questions window of GoToWebinar for those of you who are participating live with us, not in the recording. And we'd love to try to answer those questions while we're going through. And we also save a large QA session for the end as well. So without further ado, let's jump right in and take a look at today's topic. So in our previous portions of this series, we've discussed and demonstrated a tool on our website that really helps you showcase the potential for some automation within our tools, within our CTC suite of tools, or for that matter, any automation that you could potentially use. You can leverage these tools, that particular ROI calculator, to help you. And the whole goal is to help you realize how you can get a return on your investment in our tools. So today, we're going to talk about another one of these workflows, very specific one that we all kind of face throughout the life cycle of our Revit project model development. So imagine this. In fact, you probably don't have to imagine it because you might be doing this right now. We constantly are generating updated print sets and exported files for the purpose of coordinating with outside design team members. It's absolutely essential. We do this all the time. The problem is it can be really time consuming and it interrupts sort of that design cycle, that design flow. So we have a solution for this. And in this session today, I want to show you exactly how we can automate that whole repetitive process that we have to do over and over again and turn it into a very efficient process. We're going to talk about the process first. We're just going to outline to set common ground for everybody. And then we're going to demonstrate the workflow automated. And finally, I'm going to show you how to set it all up. So we're going to very specifically go through those steps. Identify the issue. We're going to talk about the workflow. I'm going to demonstrate it real quick, and then we're going to actually step through what the next steps are for you to be able to implement this at your firm. First off, what is the issue that we actually run into? And I'm doing this because some of us don't realize necessarily that this is an issue. We just accept it for what it is. But I want to point out, this is a real thing. The manual export creation is very tedious. When you have to export DWGs and export Navisworks models and potentially kick out specialized PDFs and potentially kick out other file types. There's a lot of them that we may have to kick out and dump out to other outside files. Each file type needs to be exported independently of others. It's a full process for each one. Each of the exported views usually need to be selected by name at least once and perhaps saved to a set. Hopefully that set stays up to date. If the view names change or there's more views, you have to validate that every single time, and that can be kind of frustrating. When you actually do the export, you have to interact with that naming of that destination file. That's not automated. You have to intentionally click save and usually change some things about that. You can't preset what that looks like. You can't preset the structure, and if you do it wrong, oftentimes you have to go back and rename those things. You do have to be present this whole time, babysitting the process. There's messages that pop up. There are files that have to be saved, and if you don't interact with it, they don't take place. They don't do what they're supposed to do. The real issue about this is that whole process probably happens for you on some regular interval. That might be once every other week. That might be on request for internal review where you got to kick these out, or maybe it's on request by outside design teams who want updated drawings because they're not yet in Revit or can't be in Revit. This might be for weekly consultant coordinations. You might be doing those exports on a weekly basis. And certainly you're doing these on major submittal processes where you're doing a 50% DD or 75% CDs or whatever. So you're going to do these exports on some kind of interval repetitively. And we all do this over and over and over again. and it takes time. Those manual steps, you have to open the model. You have to export collections of files, whatever that collection happens to be. If that export doesn't go quite exactly as it's supposed to, or the naming process can't be fully automated, you need to make sure you rename those, because a lot of the people we're exporting for have specific naming conventions they want. It was actually a recent scenario that I've run into with a customer, and they were spending, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, but they were spending 2 days every time they had to do this every week. And usually that cycle was every week for a month, and then they would skip a month and have to do a whole thing again, 2 days. That's 8 days out of their month of design time, potentially. It's very frustrating. And then after we do this, we have to distribute those files. And we have to repeat that for each file type and each model, because sometimes we have more than one Revit project model that's a part of our overall project, and we have to do these exports from each one of those. And that all takes time. So what I want to do is quickly walk through the automated workflow. I'm not going to demonstrate it just yet. We're going to go through the ROI calculator first and just talk about what this cost looks like when we're doing these steps manually that most of us do. Even if we're using some of the BIM 360 and Autodesk Construction Cloud tools, there's still a lot of manual exporting that we have to intentionally do. And when we do that, that has time to it. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Here on the ctcsoftware.com website, we've done this before. I'm going over here to resources and I'm jumping into the ROI calculator. Today, we're talking about a building process. I'm talking Revit specifically. The tool that I'm going to be focusing on exists within Revit. So Revit architecture, MEP structural construction, doesn't really matter what trade you're in. It's going to be the same for all of us. And here what I'm trying to do is generate PDFs and other file exports. PDF is common because, we're often printing those. But sometimes I want to go to paper. Sometimes I want to go to DWG or Navisworks files, or you name it. So within this, of course, there's the default properties here. How long does it take you per set to do this? How many times a month do you do this on each project? And then how many projects do you have? You can also modify your billable rate, whatever that rate is you want to quantify, whether it's your project billable rate that you're billing out that you could be better allocating or using and making profit on, or you can use your cost, which is the hourly cost of the person doing the work. You can adjust these numbers to whatever it is you need. At the base, though, if this takes me 120 minutes, 2 hours, you can actually change this to 2 hours if you really want to. 2 hours, that's fine. And you do this 4 times a month, or maybe I say I do this once per week or once every other week. Maybe it's per month and I'm doing this, every other week in the month. Maybe so it's 2 times a month per project. And I've got 10 projects running consistently all the time. And my billable rate here is about $100. My cost is $4,800. Sorry, $48,000. That's the cost to do this particular task. There's also a time cost. It's about 460 hours, give or take. And if you're using the CTC tool that I'm going to talk about today, which is the plotter and exporter, that whole process, instead of it being 2 hours long, could be 5 minutes or less, probably less, because your time investment is going to be way less. That means you're saving 460 hours of time and potentially $4,600 if you're doing 5 minutes per each one of those as well. $46,000. Now, if you want to break this down on a per project basis, we can absolutely do that. Maybe that's 2 hours for you. In fact, let me use an example that I recently talked with a customer about. They were spending, as I was mentioning, 2 days straight. That's 16 billable hours. And they would do this every single week. Every week they had to do this. They had a really complex export they had to do. BIM 360 was not able to automate most of it. It was going to paper. It was going to specific PDF sets, very specific sets with very specific naming conventions, DWG exports, Navisworks model exports. They were doing it all by hand, and every week they were taking 2 days. A person was sitting there for 2 days for that one project. Now, they were billing that project out. Their billable rate at the time was about $150 an hour for the project. So the project cost was $124,000, and it was costing them about 830 hours every year when they were working on this long-term project, right? That is one project with this kind of workflow going on. For them, we were able to do this exact print once a week in 15 minutes. That had a time savings of 819 hours of time that they could invest back into the project and project management, and that a cost savings to the project of $122,000, right? So that's a big deal. Now, if we're talking just how much the people are being paid, the person working on this was making in the neighborhood of about $30 an hour. So this had a cost to the company, still of the 819 hours that are 820 some odd hours that was taking to do this, but it was a cost of $24,000. We sat down and talked with them about this particular suite here, the BIM batch suite and the plotter exporter, and we were able to set it up and get them working, and they literally were spending 15 minutes a week instead of 16 hours a week. That's a massive, massive time savings for them. And that time was then better spent. That 15 3/4 of an hour was better spent doing other tasks. They were able to recoup that time and use it better elsewhere. That's why this particular tool is so powerful. Now, you might not have quite that big of a time there, but let's just say it does take you 2 hours every time. For a year of a project, that's $3,100, and it's 91 hours of time. In fact, for you, if it's only going to take you 2 hours, it probably would take you 1 to 5 minutes here in this case doing this work, and that's over 100 hours worth of saving. That's a big deal. That's time back in your design budget. That's two costs. One cost is time, one cost is the money. And you can look at that as an opportunity cost as well. Again, depending on your billable rates, there's cost savings to the project, which can change potentially how you're bidding projects, how you're profiting from projects, totally up to you. So let's take a look at this tool in action. I want to show you this tool working and what it works like, okay? So I'm in Revit, I'm in a project, I have a ton of sheets going on down here. I'm just going to show it first, and then we're going to take a look at the setup. I'm going to open up the plotter exporter tool itself. I'm doing this particular one on demand, but I'm also going to take a look at how I could schedule this so that it happens every week with no time spent. I'm simply going to click Run Now because I've already got my settings loaded up where it's going to kick out some PDFs, very specific print sets, very specific sheet sizes. In fact, I'm going to modify this real quick because I wanted to use a different sheet size here. That's refreshing. Let that refresh. And I was going to make a modification before we started, but not a big deal. I'm just going to change my print sheet size so that it comes out a little bit better for what I wanted to demonstrate. My E1 sheet is a little bit screwy right now. I'm going to kick out some DWGs. There's some CAD export views, and this is going to name them as well. It's going to kick out some Navisworks files. So I'm going to go ahead and click Run Now. This is going to log and tell me when it's all done, and it's going to run this whole process. It takes a total of about, 5 minutes to go through start to finish. Now, if I'm sitting here babysitting this and watching it, that's 5 minutes of my time watching it. And that's the time that I put on the actual calculator. It was the time it takes in Revit. Normally, however, I would click Run Now, and I would go to a meeting, grab lunch, have a conversation with a coworker, do some other design task, do something else other than watching this do what it needs to do, because it's silly for me to sit here and babysit a task when I know it's actually being done, and it's going to be done repeatably. So what I want to do real quick is I'm actually going to pull up a folder of content here and just show you where this is actually going. Where did my folder go? There it is. Here we go. So I have desktop connector set up on my computer, and I have a shared folder inside of my project model in my Autodesk Docs desktop connector. I have 3 subfolders inside of there. My shared folder has DWGs, NWCs, and PDFs. And right now, it's kicking out my PDF. It actually made a second folder today, just right now, 12/13/01 today. It made a brand new folder for me, and it's putting my PDF in there as we speak. If I open up the folder that I printed earlier, it basically created a PDF. It named it exactly as I wanted it. It gave me the project number and the project name. Similarly here, if I jump back out and I go to my DWG folder, it had made a DWG folder back then as well. Now this process back here hasn't gotten to the DWGs yet, so it hasn't got the 12/14 that it's going to be making that particular folder just yet. But it did make all of my DWGs. It named them exactly as I asked for it. So in this case, I told it to name it based on the project name, project number. It's using the view type and then the view name. Now I could change that naming convention, and we'll see how that works here in a moment. but this is basically building me all of these exports in one step. Again, it's completely hands-free. And then similarly, it also made my Navisworks files out here as well, and it named each one of those based on the view that it was and the elements that I was exporting. In my case, I was dumping this out so that I could have, explicit elements in each individual Navisworks file, maybe interior versus exterior or specific systems. This is the best I could divide up in an architectural model. So, but you can divide this up and have your views pre-created in Revit and have those explicit views exported in one step with no extra work. So we'll see this thing finish up here in just a moment. It's actually still processing through my sheets. What is it on? Sheet 28 of 51 here. Now, I just saw a question roll through, and I'm going to answer this real quick while this is running. This is one of those benefits, of course, of being here live. The question is, are individuals from the company running these, or is this being done by one person? And can this be set up to run from a specific computer, like a print server in the office? And the answer to all of these is, it depends on what you want. If you want everybody intentionally running now on demand when they need to, you can absolutely do that. If you want one person sort of gatekeeping that, you can do that. And if you want this running from a particular workstation in, say, a server room that's told to schedule this and do this, you can absolutely do that instead. So it's totally up to you how you want to configure the plotter and exporter. I'm demonstrating this from it running directly from, say, a project coordinator's machine. That's how typically I see this run. But you could absolutely run this from sort of a server-based or a centralized print station-based environment. It all works. Now, if you are running the scheduler, running it silently, running it after hours perhaps, we'll get more into that here in a moment, but if you are doing that, you do need to make sure that whoever is signed in on that workstation has the correct rights to the BIM 360 Autodesk Construction Cloud projects or local paths on your local system so that it can properly run. So that is the only criteria that you need to make sure you set up. Some users will create a very specific print user just for that purpose if it's BIM 360 and assign that user read ability, print ability to the projects. And then you can leverage that with the scheduler to automate that process pretty quick. So this is just about done. And again, normally I wouldn't be babysitting this, so I wouldn't usually be watching this whole workflow happen. I would just click it and grab a cup of coffee, grab lunch, grab whatever, and come back and it'll be done for me. And then I would spend the rest of my time, the rest of that 5 minutes per se, kind of reviewing the actual files that got exported. Now, one nice thing about this, because this is being saved into my Autodesk Docs folder here on my local computer, and I'm leveraging Desktop Connector, when these files do get dropped into these folders, they will automatically sync to the project itself, and they'll just be available to whomever they're supposed to be available, because that's how the whole Desktop Connector system works. You can see here, my DWG folders actually just got created. So if I was to jump into, say, this 24101301 folder right here, 121301 that is, these files all just got made by that tool named, put in this folder, and they're already syncing up to the BIM 360 project, no work by me. And similarly here, these Navisworks models, they got re-exported as well. They got named, put in their proper folder with the right file types, right views, and they're all getting processed up as well. This tool is telling me that it did all of the things that I asked of it, give me a bunch of information, the 13 specific steps that it needed to do, it did, and I didn't have to do anything other than, let my computer run. So that's as simple as this process can be. And again, I can even have this thing be scheduled. The way that I have this set up is every Friday night at 6 p.m., in my case, Central Time. You could do it whatever time zone you wanted, but at 6 p.m., it opens up a series of models and runs them through the same exact export processes, and I'm completely hands-free. I'm not even in the office. I'm just letting it run, and when I come in Monday morning, all of those models are properly exported in a very consistent way, and it cost me 0 time because I wasn't using my computer at the time anyway. So it's a powerful, powerful tool. So let me jump back into the PowerPoint here for just a minute. We just talked about the actual automated workflow. Let's take a look at what that might look like to create this workflow. What are your next steps? So if you wanted to set this up, how could you benefit from this in the same way that I am? Well, first off, it's important that you have good, generally quality, good project setups, right? That's kind of important. In my case, I have a relatively well set up project, even if my view naming isn't always consistent. Because I leverage view templates very heavily, my project views are automatically grouped into specific subdirectories. They automatically have the right visibility graphics associated. And more importantly, for the purpose of this plotter and exporter process, they also automatically have specific properties associated to them already. And we're going to leverage those very heavily. So what I want to do is I want to start from scratch. I'm going to create a brand new collection of settings here. It's completely empty. We're going to completely start over. And I want to show you from scratch how you can set this up. If you have plotter and exporter already on your system, you can actually follow along 100% with what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything that requires a particular model. You might make some slightly different choices. That's fine. But I want to show you exactly how you can configure this. The first thing that you're probably going to want to do over here on the right is figure out what export types you want. Down here at the bottom, there's an add row button. And this lets you choose what your destination file types are going to be. Maybe you want to print out to a PDF. You may want two different sets of PDF. Maybe there's a full-size PDF set, and maybe there's an 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 half size or check set size that you want to add. You can add as many of these to this list as you want, and each of these can be a little bit different if you really want them to be. You can also dump out DWGs. And maybe I want one print setting for my plans, or one export setting for my plan views that are going out to a particular consultant, and maybe I need a separate collection that's going to go out to my Civil 3D team because I want a 3D model with perhaps different naming conventions and even different layer settings. You can create as many of these as you need. If I do want to dump out Navisworks files, I can do that. If you want IFC files or FBX files, you name it. The file types that you can typically export from Revit, we can 100% automate with this process. In this case, I'm only going to be focusing on two of these. So I'm going to remove the PDF print set here. Let's actually delete that row entirely, get rid of those, and we're just going to keep PDF and DWG here, just one each of these and one Navisworks collection. So within here, I'm going to start with my PDFs. Now, the way that I like to find these views, I like to organize them in a very specific way. In fact, I'm going to go into the settings here so you can see why I'm doing this. You may choose to create separate files, and if you do that, fantastic. Some of what I'm doing, then you may not need to worry about it. But in my case, I like to combine my prints together into a single PDF. I find that's easier to deliver, and I like to keep the pages in the order I want them. That saves me a whole ton of post-processing. So with those pages all together in one, I can actually change how this is going to be named. I don't have to use my Revit project file name. What I can use instead, for example, is my project number, my project name, and maybe I want to actually have the date, today's date here. So if I, where is it? I thought, there it is. No, that's the project issue date. There it is, processing date. So I can put the date as a suffix on this if I really want to. And if you really want to, you can even put the time. So I can have the project number, project name, the date of the print, the suffix there if you want a special suffix for check set or whatever, not for construction, whatever, you can put whatever you want on there. But I'm actually specifically formatting this out exactly as I want it. I can tell it exactly which PDF driver it is I want. In fact, I'm using the built-in CTC PDF driver. And then from this, I can also choose whatever my sheet size is going to be and where my destination for this is going to go. So I don't have to specifically choose every single time. You can even tell this to go relative to the project model. So if you're opening up central files from the BIM 360 folders, and you know what that path is, you can actually save back directly to that path to a relative folder. So I can make this setting once and use this on any number of project models. So I don't have to set this up for every single project because my naming conventions are probably going to be pretty consistent unless a customer asks for something very specific. And then I would just modify this for their specific request. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and drop this into the Autodesk Docs folder to the project that I'm working on, in this case, to my shared PDF folder, and I'm just going to click OK. And I'm going there because I'm automatically creating a new subfolder for date and time so I can track my submittals of each of the individual files by date and time and keep that history. You don't have to do that. It's just how I'm choosing to do that. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click OK on this. And again, keep in mind, I'm setting up my next little collection of views because I'm doing all of my sheets into a single file. Okay, so for this PDF collection over here, I am not going to go into my sheets here and kind of browse through and find like views and sheet set. Yeah, I'm not going to go in there and do it one by one, dragging individual things over. That would be very silly for me to do one by one. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to my sheets collection in my wildcard search library, and I'm going to create a little collection of stuff. I'm going to find everything. Use those asterisk search here. I'm going to call this my general sheets. So this is my general sheets. If I could spell, that would be glorious. I'm searching explicitly for sheets, and I only want to include those whose discipline here. If I go look for the discipline, I have a special parameter, I think that's on here, sheet discipline. There we go. If that equals a specific value, in my case, general, then I want it to find that particular sheet. This is my title sheet, my G sheet. So I want that sheet specifically to be the very first thing that it finds. My general sheet or sheets is going to be the first thing in my PDF set. And that's important because, again, this is a G sheet. My sheet number is G000. So normally, if I was to print this out of Revit inherently and tell it to just print it, it's going to put the G sheet well after the A sheets because alphanumeric sorting, it goes later. You can even see over here the G sheet is later because of alphabetic sorting over here. But I'm going to be able to get it to go first. So I'm going to go ahead and just click OK on this general sheets, and I'm going to drag and drop that into my little PDF set over here. So it's going to find whatever's in general sheets, 100%, it'll find that. I'm going to add another one. In fact, I'm going to copy general sheets just because I'm lazy and I don't feel like typing everything out again. I'm going to go in here and type in structural sheets. Now, normally I would actually create for myself an existing sheet, which I'd probably put first. SE sheets go first. And then I'd have structural demolition. That'd be SD sheets. Maybe I want those to go next. Maybe I would completely skip the SE sheets. That's up to you. And then I'm going to have my structural sheets, which are all my S sheets. So I could do structural sheets and specifically demo, right? And so for this, I'm going to be finding any of my sheets that are, I don't have any structure. Oh, I do have structural sheets. Good. So I have structure sheets here. And I'm also going to find my sheet phase. If that sheet phase equals demo, let's test this out and see what we come. There's one structural demo sheet in my set, then I want that to go next. So I'm going to have that in my collection here, structure demo. And so I can just OK this. And I'm going to duplicate that as well. So I may as well just have structure sheets new. And I'm going to modify this little filter over here to new, test this out. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of extra new sheets that exist out there. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK and just OK this. And I can take both of those and put those in here after that went to the wrong collection. That's fine. Let's put it up here. Well, I'll delete those in a minute here. Grab these, put them into my PDF set. And let's reorganize this. Move this up to the top. And I'm going to take these ones here later on, and we'll just remove those selected ones there. Okay, so I'm going to also duplicate this for my architecture sheets. Same thing, basically the same deal. I'm just going to right-click, duplicate that, or I could click the button. Either way, this is now architectural. Architectural sheets demolition. So we'll do the architecture sheets here. Hopefully this finds all my sheets. Yeah, there's all my AD sheets. Perfect. That's great. And I'm going to click OK on that. And one more here. I'm going to duplicate this again. and I'm going to find my new architectural new sheets. So we're going to set this to new. Test this out. Yep, there's all my new sheets in order, alphanumerically sorting, and click OK. Now, pretty much every single one of my projects, they're all going to be set up this exact same way. So for me, I don't have to worry about these kind of really ever changing. It's always going to be general. If there's structural demo, it's going to put them next. If there's none, it'll just do nothing. If there's new sheets, great, it'll print the new sheets. If there's none of those, it'll leave them out. The architectural sheets will, oh, I want that one first, move up in my list. I want the demo sheets first and the new sheets second. So now when I print this PDF, it's going to use my sheet size, name it, print these sheets in order, organize them within the actual printed PDF, the single file, and save it, and I'm done. That's ready to go. For the DWGs, basically the same thing. I'm not going to go find explicit views, because if somebody adds views to a project or I go from project to project, I want my views to be configured in a consistent way. So once again, I'm going to create a wildcard search. I'm going to look for everything. This is going to be my civil CAD export collection. Export, there we go. I'm going to be searching for views here. Very specifically, I'm looking for 3D views. I'm looking for anything that's probably going to be coordination. And I'm looking for anything where the view type, I think it's view type that I'm looking for here. View classification, perhaps, equals or contains. We'll do equals. Nope, it's not view classification. Looking at the wrong thing. View, what is it called? I forget what my setting was. Whoops. Visual style view type, maybe it is view type. Yep, that is what it is. I want this to be my export CAD views here. So I've got export CAD collections of content. If I test this out, it's looking specifically for 3D views that are set to be export CAD. And if I test this, apparently nothing was found. None of my views equal that. Well, that's okay. If I don't have any, then it won't actually do the export. I'm just going to click OK on this. And I'm going to duplicate this. Let's take this guy here, let's copy it, and let's do another one for basically all view types. And I'm going to leave the exact same settings, retest. There's nothing. Search for views, include by view type where it equals, or export CAD. It should have those. Let's try this. Search for export. I don't have any views. Oh, discipline coordination, that's why. Let's do all view types. There we go, whole bunch of views. Discipline is architectural. That's why I wasn't finding them. I was filtering to a group that I thought it was, and I was wrong. That's okay. Let's just set this back to star up here. Test this out. This is why I always test, because it makes my life just a little easier. Here you'll see there's all my reflected ceiling plans and floor plans. There's my 3D view right there for my site export. In this case, it's all grouped together in just the one collection, and that's okay. I could tell this, to find ceiling plans in one, floor plans in another, 3D views in another. I'm just going to do this in one collection here in this case and click OK. There's my civil CAD export, or actually it's my full CAD export, and I'll drop that in my DWGs. Now, every single time I dump out my DWGs, again, I can tell it where to go. So once again, it's going to go to my DWG folder. It's going to create a date and timestamp subfolder if I want it to. I can use built-in drawing settings for my standards or a specific customer standard. I could use custom settings and then modify what they look like. I can tell it to delete the PCP files that get exported along with it and choose exactly how my files get named. What I'm going to do, once again, is I'm going to put very specifically the project number, project name, get rid of the view type because I don't really care what the view type is, and just use the view name. And then if you really wanted to, you could suffix with the date and timestamp, though I typically don't do that because I want people to be able to just relink it. And I'm going to be putting it into a specific subfolder. They can relink from a different subfolder or copy those files down. But this makes it real easy. Now I'm getting a very consistent file name every single time based on the views that are getting exported with very consistent naming. And it's completely independent from my Revit project name, which probably isn't going to necessarily follow my DWG export standards. I can use properties in the view to determine what they're supposed to be. That can save me a lot of headache. Once more, same exact thing. I will just duplicate this here. I'm going to modify this just a little bit and modify it to export Navisworks. And this is going to be my Navis export. So I'm basically building this up. This one here, though, specifically, I do only want 3D views for the export Navis collection. I have 5 in this case specific views that are in that set, and I can take that Navis export and simply drop it over here. Once again, modify your settings, tell it where it's going to go. In my case, the NWC folder with a date and timed created suffix, exactly how I want these to be named. Once again, probably going to go in here and use project number, project name. Project number, project name, probably put view name there at the end. So it's going to use whatever those collections are, and I'm all done. So that's ready to go. I'm all set. All I have to do is save this, and I could click run now, right now, and it would do every one of those things. And every time I want to run this, I can just reuse those settings, just open those up if I had a different collection, or it'll remember what I had last loaded. Just open this up, run it, I'm off to the races. I can go grab lunch and it will be done when I get back with all of the sheets in exactly the right order, all my drawings done, my Navisworks files, and I never have to babysit this again. Massive, massive time savings. Let's save this. Let's call this webinar export. I'm going to give this a date, 2024. 0110 is when I built this particular one, and I can send this as just like my general standard. It's actually the exact same, pretty much the exact same settings that I just used. So I can save this. In the future, I can open up whichever one it is I want. I can load my previous one if I need to, and it has, in this case, existing demo new settings with all the basically the same exact config, or I can open up the one that we just built just now, and it's going to, in this case, do my structure and architectural set. And by the way, for those of you who are MEP, I have a full MEP export set here as well. For those of you who have ever looked at our MEP Productivity Pack PDFs that we exported, every one of those gets done. I just click run now when I'm in that central file, and it just runs all of them, dumps all those files out consistently, gives me an updated print set, and I do not have to babysit it at all. I click go, I grab lunch, I come back, and the entire information kit is up to date with the latest and greatest version of that. This is, in this case, 17 different complete PDFs with 17 different collections of files that it finds from the project and just runs. And it takes me 0 time. It took me 1 time setting it up, and every time I want to refresh it, I just click go. And every time I want to do my current export here, I just click run now and I let it rip. In fact, for the fun of it, when I jump over to the QA session here for right now, let's just click run now at 12:37 and let it go. And it's going to do the exact same thing I told it to do before. It's fewer sheets because I'm not grabbing any existing sheets this time, but it's going to go ahead and do the exact same export, the exact same print in the exact same way. And this is 100% repeatable, and I never have to play guess my best. It's going to work every time. So with that, you now know exactly the next steps that you need to go through to create this exact workflow for yourself. With that, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you to those of you who are watching this on a recording, right, on the YouTube channel. We hope you like it. We hope that you come back for more of these in the future.